Hello, my name is GameDog, and today I'll be going over my new Magicka Sorcerer build that I made a montage on about 2 weeks ago, and some of you guys wanted me to show you what this build was about. So, it's a small scale and solo play build, and it's meant for groups that are no bigger than 4 or 5 people, and of course the occasional times that you go solo and want to challenge the world and possibly try to not die. This build is a 5-piece heavy armor Magicka Sorcerer, not a light armor build, and it will be having 2 sustain sets and another sort of sustain set, a set that's meant for survivability, so it's going to be pretty tough to kill. It's not going to have the most of damage, but it's going to be using the sorcerer's built-in mechanics to be dealing a lot of burst. So this build can take a lot of heat and can deal a lot of pressure if you use it correctly. So let's get into the build first here. First up, we have the 2 monster sets we're running. We're running Pirate Skeleton, and the reason is mainly because this is the Sorc meta. This is one of the stronger sets you can have for sorcerers. It basically reduces your damage taken, but also your healing received. But in the sorcerer's case, this 30% less damage taken will actually apply to your shields. So, and a lot of people already know. I know a lot of people already know this, but and it has been made clear by a lot of other players, and it's almost meta. A lot of sorcerers are running this, but I wanted to show you the example that I think is the one that can provide the best time in PvP. So this is what I'd use, especially if you're playing outnumbered. If you're playing solo, this can be really important for you. And this build can challenge solo situations pretty well. It's really survivable, and it has good burst if you play it right. You could switch Pirate Skeleton out with something else like Infernal Guardian here, if you feel like you need some more damage. Since this build is running heavy armor and is having 2 sustain sets, you don't really need this. But it's really nice to use if you want to take less damage, which you of course want to when you're outnumbered 5 to 1, 4 to 1. So I did a mistake in my 1vx video not wearing this and wearing Infernal Guardian while trying to do a 1v9. And I was so close to dying so many times. But if you're in a group, Infernal Guardian is definitely really nice to use. It almost, this mortar, it launches almost 3 mortars. Almost give you the direction of the enemy furthest away, so it can expose like Nightblades who are running behind you trying to snipe you or something, and it'll almost give you a directional feel of where your enemies are. So it's really nice. Now for the other sets here, we are running Magnus and we are running Lich. These are 2 sustain sets. Lich, which is giving us recovery when we fall low on max Magicka, and Magnus, which is negating the cost, has an 8% chance to negate the cost of one of our abilities. Now we're running Lich on our back bar because we're only using our back bar on rotations where we need to proc Curse, which is obviously one of our stronger bursts, and I'll get into that when I get to the skills. But when we need to proc Harness Magicka or Daedric Minefield, or maybe even the Healing Ultimate here, we want to be proccing Lich. So, and the reason I also have Cursed slotted on the back bar is because when we do our rotations that often, we'll constantly end up proccing Lich whenever we're low enough and get the most usage out of it. Lich can be really nice with the extra recovery. It gives you almost 1,000 recovery for 20 seconds. And I found that, I don't have any other pots here, but if we use just this trash pot here, and we get ourselves low on magic, just going to be using this here. Yeah, you see it proc there, you kind of glow blue, and then you proc this, and you will see our recovery going sky high to 3.5k. This is what you can do when you need some quick Magicka back. Let's say your health is not low, your stamina is not low, so you don't want to be using your removable pots or your tripods. You can use this here, extra Magicka recovery, and just get a ton of recovery for the duration there. And you can see it's gone quite quickly, but it's really nice for recovering some Magicka, and that's why we're using Lich as well. For the Magnus, the reason we're running this is to negate some of these expensive abilities that the Sorc has, like Hardened Ward is a perfect example of an ability that can be really tough to cast if you don't got the sustain for it. Now, it's not the problem is in this build's case. Another thing is that the reason we're running 2 sustain sets is because that we're running 5 heavy armor. The 5 heavy armor instead of light armor is like, if you look at the light armor passives, it's headed towards Magicka recovery, cost reduction, and spell penetration. Those are things you're not going to get with heavy armor. However, with heavy armor, you're going to get tankiness, you're going to get the Constitution passive, which feeds you stamina like no other thing. and Wrath, for example. And these two actually procs on shields, by the way. So they're really useful for sorcerers, even though you're running heavy armor. And that's the reason we're running 5 heavy here, 1 medium, 1 light. The 1 medium, 1 light are of course to proc the Undaunted, if you have that. And it's also enabling us to put like a few points into these and get something out of it. Not the most, like 4% recovery is not too much, but I guess it's worth using if we can get just a bit more survivability out of it. And then you have the Undaunted here, which is basically giving you a bit more stats. 6% more stats to or max Magicka health and stamina. Another thing is we're running Tri-Stat, which is really useful. So we have a big stamina pool just to start with, and our heavy armor is actually going to feed us a lot of stamina with a Constitution passive. So you're going to be able to block when you need to. You're going to be able to roll dodge when you need to. So don't be afraid to get a bit wild with this build here. It can take it, definitely. And it's also pretty fast, even though you have heavy armor. So don't get afraid to get into a shitty situation. You can always get out of it. You're really tanky, especially with pirate skeletons. So don't be afraid to get yourself into some deep shit, to say. So let's look here at the weapons. We're running Sharpened, of course, because it basically increases our physical and spell penetration, which is so important this patch where everyone is running heavy armor. Heavy armor is really meta. I guess you guys already know. I don't think it's a new thing. And don't worry, I think the Morrowind patch might just break it. Hopefully will break it. And when the Morrowind patch arrives, if they change too much about it, I will do an update on this build. So don't worry, if you're settling for this, I'll be there to help you out when they change a few things. So we're running Sharpened on front bar. We're also running the weapon enchantment. Why are we doing that? Well, for weapon and spell damage, it's quite low here, so we do want to have some more. And I'm going to get into why it's so low. Same for our critical, insanely low. We are running spell enchantments on these on the jewelry though, so we do have a bit spell damage, but not the most. Let me just see actually when I proc this here. I mean 2-4, and if you proc this, you could probably get it up to 3k. So it's not too bad if you light attack weave enough, but it is quite low for a Magicka Sorcerer, I'd say. And on the back bar, we're having Lich here. This is defending, obviously, because when we are on our back bar, we're usually in the situation where we're about to die. Considering we have Healing Ward and we have Bold Escape. I haven't morphed this. I'm gonna get into why I haven't morphed it. Has something to do with Streak. Some of you Sorc players might know why. But this is our back bar. We want to use this when we're retreating and for the duration where we can use a Haunting Curse here. So that's our skill setup. I wanted to add one more thing. You can use poisons on the back bar. I think your resto bar is actually going to proc them. And let me just see if I can. Sorry, you can see your like staff is glowing a bit when you switch to the bar, and that means that your poison is active. Oh, I want to use these guys for some practice in a moment. So let me just leave them out there. I hate that the screen is growing red now. These are really nasty, and most players will hate you for using them. Dude, what's your problem? Okay, most players will hate you for using them. I hate people who use these, and I don't use them often myself. Now I'm having them on the bar just for this example because I want to show this build at its best, and it's the same thing. I'm running Deathstroll on front bar as well. I'm gonna get into that in a moment. So some dirty things. This is not a non-meta build. This is a pretty meta build, but it's what's one of the stronger things to run with this patch, and I'm really confident with how this build plays. But if you want if you want to be extra nasty, and I don't recommend this because a lot of players are gonna hate you, and I'm gonna hate you for using this as well. I'm gonna hate myself for using it. It reduces the enemies. It increases the enemy's cost of magic and stamina abilities for 6.4 seconds. This can devastate some builds. Stamina Nightblades, some Magicka Sorcerers, Magicka Nightblades, Magicka DKs. Stam DKs are a bit harder, I think, but this can devastate some builds, and it's kind of a broken thing. I don't know why they still have this in here, but it's best in slot, so I want to put it down here for you. You can use it with the Resto Staff and do some light attacks to proc it. It's really nasty. So let's get into the stats here. Just want to show you some quick stats. First up, we got our max magic. It's a bit low because we're running 2 sustained sets, but 37k is enough to get our wards, or shields I mean, to about 19k stacked. So 19k stacked is fine. I don't really need more than that. We are running heavy armor. We're having a lot of critical resistance, so I don't really mind getting lower shields like that. That's fine. Our max health is also fine. We're not having any buffs really on this campaign, so if you get the Emperor buff, you can count with about 25k health. That's pretty good for Magicka Sorcerer. Next up, we got our stamina, 14k. We're running tri-stat food, all primary stats here, as you can see. This is going to help us with the blocking and roll dodging and doing all the things you kind of need to when you're outnumbered and you are getting pressured by people who want to eat you alive. I mean, some of these players, especially on PCEU, they're like hungry dogs. They want to tear you apart as soon as they see you. So you want to have a bit of stamina to help yourself out there. This is going to help you. The max stamina is also going to get supported by the Constitution passive from your heavy armor skill tree here. So you'll definitely get to use it well. And you can get you can get a lot of stamina back. Just remember not to block too often. If you block too often, you are going to fall low. And when you can't CC break, even though this build is quite one of the tougher sorcerer setups, you're still going to get you're still going to take a lot of damage. So recovery here is a bit higher. It's not insanely high, but as I showed you, when you proc Lich and when you use just a trash pot, you can get this really high up. We're using Astronax Stone, and the reason we're using this over something like Thief or Shadow is because we don't actually have too much crit, nor do we need it when it gets to burst. And I'm going to get into why we're doing burst in a second when I get to the skills. As you saw, spell damage is a bit low, but when we proc a weapon damage enchantment and we put Power Surge up here, we're gonna get some decent damage anyway. So it's not because we're too low on it. We are having our main weapon here as legendary, and you could make all the other pieces legendary. I'm pretty confident with the builds, though I don't have the financial ability to increase the stats of these. I'm sad to say. However, I do wear all these in impen, so I didn't get the helmet. Pledges, don't like them. Next up, we got our physical and spell resistance. Now on the back bar it's a bit higher, and if you choose to run with Boundless Storm, I think it's called, Lightning Form here, you're going to get a bit more. So if you choose to switch this out with a flex spot here like Daedric Minefield, you can get some quite good armor and resistance, which means that you don't always need to have your shield up if you, for example, if you want to proceed to go and get that kill that Nightblade, but you're getting raped by 20 other people who wants to kill you. You're going to survive for that bit longer to maybe pull it off and maybe just get yourself out of there with Healing Ward and the Restoration Staff Ultimate. So that was it for the stats here. We are vampires as well for increased stamina recovery and Magicka recovery. We don't really need health recovery. We got our wards for healing, so that's fine. And that was really it. Let's get into also having 64 attribute points into max magic. You want to have as much max magic as you can. Health is not really that big of a problem. As I said, we've got a lot of armor to deal with, so your physical resistance is going to help your survivability a lot. So don't be afraid to have too low health on this build. You're going to be pretty tanky. So let's get into the stats here. Sorry, into the abilities here. First on our front bar here we have Crystal Fragments. This is sort of one of our hardest hitting burst abilities. I would always say this is one of the hardest hitting bursts abilities in the game. Like, you can proc this, you have a 35% chance to proc this when you're using another magic ability, I think, and it stuns the enemy. And when you proc this off of using other abilities, it has a 50% less cost, and I'm just going to show you. Your hands are going to glow like this when it lands, and most of you probably know that. But you can really use this to stack it with other burst abilities. And you can see how often it procs. It's almost reliable procs. I mean, you can almost just... You can put a guarantee on this and say, it's going to proc within the next 5 seconds. That's why this is a really, really, really nice ability. So definitely get into use that. And you can use it in burst combos with Mage's Wrath and Haunting Curse. And if you use Eye of the Flame or Dawnbreaker, that's another thing that I'm going to get into in a moment here. If you use that or Dawnbreaker, you're going to be dealing so much damage to people. So, and that's why I'm saying that it's not too important that our magic is low, or critical is low, and our spell damage is low. We're going to make up for that in the sorcerer's natural ability to just completely destroy people with these stacked bursts. So even though our max our max tooltip damage is a bit low, we can still do a lot of damage, and that's a thing that a lot of people don't really think about. Statistics is another thing than what's actually going on in PvP. And I almost say that I'd rather have good burst combos and knowing when to place my burst than pure damage on the statistics here. So statistics is not everything, guys. Large tooltips is not everything. It's all about how do you put it down, how do you land it. This is a bit of a tank and spank setup. If you can drag people out somewhere and tank them for a moment, and when you get your C-frag up, you get your curse up running. That's where you proc it. Down with the Dawnbreaker, you always have a certain kill there. Most people will not be able to sustain the damage you get from that. So really, really awesome. Really nice ability. Bread and butter for the Magicka Sorcerer. Watch out not to hardcast it. People can stun you if they use something like this here, Crushing Shock. So don't hardcast it too often unless you know what you're doing. I've actually been ganking people with this build, believe it or not. But you can do some nice ganks with Crystal Fragments, I'm not even lying. It's pretty fun. So next up we got Crushing Shock here. This is our spammable, range spammable with 36 meters range. That's amazing. It has a lower cost than some of the other abilities on the bar, besides our Execute here. And it deals some good sustainable damage. It deals elemental damage, so it can hit vampires a lot harder. But the reason we're using, this morph here is because it stuns enemy. It sets enemies off balance who are casting. So if someone is hard casting Crystal Fragments, if someone is using Jesus Beam, or otherwise known as Radiant Destruction, or trying to resurrect another player. Let's say you're outnumbered and you've just killed a bunch of guys, and there's a few left, but one of them is trying to resurrect one of his friends. You just throw a Crushing Shock in that direction, and he won't be able to rest the enemy. He'll get stunned for that moment there. So really nice. I really like to use this, especially because of the stun it can apply. So next up we got a Hardened Ward. We're running 2 wards as usual. This is a very, very meta thing about the sorcerers. The thing sorcerers has always been good about are the wards. So definitely use them. If you use them, just use them. Like it's one of the sorcerers' really nice, the really great thing about the sorcerers. So use your shields and use them cleverly here. The reason we're running Hardened Ward over the other morph is that we're not running with any pets. And this version here is going to give us 33% more. It's going to be taking 33% additional, or it's going to be able to take 33% additional damage. I'm sorry with the pronunciation there. It has a range, it has a duration of 6 seconds, so the duration is a bit low. The same for the back bar here with the Harness Magicka, so you gotta be using them on a certain duration and a certain rotation between your bars here. Now you don't necessarily need to stack both of these wards. Because we're running heavy armor, we can sustain with only running one of them. So that's why I've slotted this in the front bar and a heavy on one on our back bar. So we only use this if we need to, or if we are on the back bar. Let's say you get attacked while on the back bar. You don't have to waste time, switch to the front bar to get your wards. So that's why we're doing this. And again, it allows us to do the rotation to proc Lich as well. So next up we got Mage's Wrath. This is our Execute. You can land this before you start really working on the enemy. This is one of the first things you want to be applying. The same for Curse here. I'm going to get into that in a moment. And I choose this morph over the other one is because the other morph of it, when you kill an enemy, it refunds you some of the magic. Now this build has 2 sustained sets, so we're pretty set for magic. We got Constitution passives, we got potions. So we don't really need magic, believe me. This build handles Magicka really great. So don't worry about your Magicka. Use the other morph, the one that applies explosive damage that can hit other players. It can reveal Nightblades, for example, if the players you're hitting on are in a group and they're in a tight space. This can be really nice as well to distribute some of the damage. Has a good range, and it has a nice duration as well. When you put it on the enemy, you have a bit of time to work on them. You have 4 seconds before the explosion actually procs. So you can put this on an enemy and then start working on them with Crushing Shocks and C-frags, and when they get low enough, this thing will proc by itself. So really nice ability, really nice Execute here. It's also a bit cheaper compared to some of the other abilities, but definitely worth using, especially when we can get it for free with the 8% chance here from Magnus. So next up here we've got Power Surge. This is our major sorcery buff. and it's also healing us. You could use entropy if you want to. Entropy can heal you for some of your light and heavy attacks, so it really depends on personal preference. You also get a bit more recovery, I think, from using this. Now I haven't unlocked these because I'm a lazy person and I don't want to collect law books anymore. I mean, you can't really say anything against that. Like, this is probably one of the most boring things to do, besides sky shard hunting, is collecting law books. So, but you could use entropy, and you could use that for some more recovery from the major skill passives here. But I'm using this because you don't need a target. You need a target to proc entropy. You don't need a target to proc power surge here. So, and it has duration that is longer than entropy as well. Plus, it heals you for part of the critical damage you do, which is really nice when you have your shields up. Because you don't want to be using Healing Ward here, which is your main heal. It's your panic button. You don't want to be using Healing Ward unless you get, I'd say, below 50% health. So if you're not below 50%, don't go ahead and use this. This is expensive, like 3,500. Use this instead here. Use this to heal yourself while stacking shields, because when your shields are up, your health bar is not going to take damage, of course, which means that this is gonna give you the healing that you need. So next up here we got our ultimate, and as I said, you could switch between Dawnbreaker, which I know a lot of people likes to use. It's a real nice little burst ability you can put in there. Even though it's physical damage, we're still running Tri-Stat food, so we're getting a bit more max stamina, and Power Surge is actually increasing our weapon damage as well. So this is pretty good, and as you can see, the tooltips are not bad. Plus this is a stun, and it has a nice little what can you say, after effect that come when you've already put it down once. So I don't have the other off because I don't have any skill points. Again, I'm lazy. I don't want to be. Don't judge me. I do not want to run after sky shards anymore. Jesus Christ. Now I did use here Destruction Ultimate. Obviously, after Flame. I did use that before, and the reason I did is because it is properly, AoE wise and burst wise, one of the strongest things, one of the most cancerous things you can ever put down or curse an enemy with. And people will be mad at you for using this. Same with the poisons. It's really cancerous meta thing, but if you're playing outnumbered, I'd allow myself to use this. And it's really nice. It can really screw someone over if they don't expect this to come. You need to expect this to come to survive it, I say. But on this build, again, you have a lot of resistances. So you might be able to survive other players' Eye of the Flames. So don't worry, you're not the guy who's going to be circled down by these things. But other players, like especially Vampire Nightblades, they're going to melt inside of this thing. As well, if you put this down with a Mage's Wrath and then you put a curse on that Nightblade, he's going to die from it. He's going to get exposed by the curse. It's going to fuck him over properly. So 7 seconds of godlike DPS. Use this if you need to. Don't overuse it. People are going to hate you for it. Next up, Haunting Curse here. And by the way, this is our expensive ultimate. It's quite expensive. Don't use this too often. Don't use it when you feel like the timing is right. Don't just throw it in a corner. Sorry, it's the one that follows you, but don't just throw it when there's no enemies or if there's only one enemy. You want to be using this when there's more enemies because it has a high cost. And if you get low on health, you want to be using this instead of that, really, because the rest of ultimate is really nice as well. I'm going to get into that in a moment. So first up here we got Haunting Curse. This is on a back bar. The reason we have this on a back bar is because we want to do the rotation here from front to back bar so we can proc Lich once in a while. But what Curse pretty much does is that you put it on someone and then it's gonna proc like that, and it's gonna do that twice. Now you can land this with other burst combos, as you can see there, C-Frag Curse combos. Those are hitting the enemy really hard. So you can also do it with Mage's Wrath here, just wait for it to explode. Come on, mate. Boom. And they should go off, both of them. So this is really nice also if you want to expose Nightblade. If you see a Nightblade who's cloaking a lot, put this on him and he's going to be exposed twice because of its procking. It procs twice, obviously. The first ones come within the 3.5 seconds and the next one come at 8.5. So there's a bit of time between each of the procs. But you can put this on the enemy 36 meters away, so the range is no problem. It's really nice. It has good burst. This is a part of the Magicka Sorcerer's built-in burst combination, with the Sea Frags and Mage's Wrath. So, and this yet another example of an ability where you don't need high statistics to actually use it. You don't need high crits, you don't need high spell damage, you don't need high max magic. You're still going to be having a really nice tooltip on this thing. 10k almost on 2 procs. Let me actually just buff up here. You're going to have almost 10k here, and you're going to have 13k there. I mean, it's still really great burst, really great tooltips. Next up here we got Bold Escape. Why have I not morphed this? The reason I haven't morphed this is because the streak version of it, which is what I usually would be using and what I would recommend you to use, is bugged. Yes, I'll show you a little clip here. Kom nu for fanden, kom nu! Hvorfor virker streak ikke? Åh nej. Fuck. Åh fuck. Kom nu. Dø. Hvor har de en healer hele tiden? Det er sindssygt irriterende, mand. Kom nu. Sådan. Streak for fanden. Kom nu for fanden, mand. Hvad sker der? Hvad sker der for streak? Hvad fanden er det, der foregår? Kom nu. Kom nu, streak for fanden. Hvad sker der, mand? For fanden. Kom nu. Op. So streak is basically bugged in the way that if you try to streak and there's a lot of enemies or a lot of lag, I think. I don't really know what causes it, but sometimes you'll be stuck right where you stand and you can't move, and the enemies will freely just stand there and hit their attacks on you, and you can do nothing but watching yourself die. This is so frustrating when you're fighting a big group like I showed you in that clip there, a big group of yellows who were grinding Televar stones. Even though they're PvE players and they didn't really land the heaviest burst combos, it was annoying to the extent where you just want to go out and run 10 kilometers. So if you really want to use streak, you can still use it. It's really great. It only bugs out occasionally when it's really you're really in a nasty spot. But if you don't want it and you absolutely hate the debugged streak version, you can use the other morph. As far as I could understand, it's not bugged. However, I haven't used it. I've been using streak all along. But you can do what you want here. If you want to try your luck with streak, do it. Streak is real nice. Stuns your enemy, deals a bunch of damage there. The other morph, it can absorb some of the enemy's projectiles, but sadly it's not as powerful as streak is, but it's not bugged. So use what you want here, but I'd advise you to use either of the two here. It's a really great ability. It's basically your escape. You're a heavy armor wearer, but you're still having the speed of a light armor character. As you can see how far I can get by just using that. So you can get out of trouble pretty fast. If a Zerg is following you, you can really get away from them. You can go like through a Zerg with it as well, stunning them all if you use streak. But just be warned, it's bugged. So next up here we've got Harness Magicka. This is our second shield. We're having this on our back bar. Why are we using Harness over Dampen Magic, even though we're not having a lot of light armor abilities? Because light armor abilities will increase the Magicka you get back from using this, which is the whole idea about Harness. We're using Harness still because the amount of Magicka we receive is 6%, but it's still good enough for us to sustain a bit on it. And I actually like this version a lot more than Dampen Magic. So it's quite an expensive shield. It's a bit more expensive than Hardened Ward. So you want to be using this a bit less. And you don't want to be using this if you're finding stamina characters. I mean, you don't want to be using it too often, because you're not going to get Magicka back from it. If you're finding a stamina player in a 1v1, you definitely want to be focusing your Hardened Ward. But again, if you're 1vxing, use these two as much as you can, obviously. If you're on the back bar and you happen to not be able to switch because you're trying to heal yourself a healing ward or using your Resto Ultimate here, you can proc a Harness Magicka and do it in like a quick switch to the next bar here with an animation cancel, so definitely useful. Sorcs should run both shields because stacked they can provide you with a lot of shields, as you can see here. Even though I'm running heavy armor and not that high max magic, I'm still getting 19k shields. And it has the same duration as the shield on our front bar, 6 seconds, which is really nice because we can time them on the same level then. But this is a part of my rotation. Every time I get on my back bar and I proc Hunting Curse, I'll put this up as well. So you can use it in a rotation. So next up here we got Healing Ward. This is our panic button. This is our stronger heal. Again, another damage shield. We use that because we have a lot into Bastion here in our champion skill tree. And it is amazing because it heals you for the full size of the ward. This is another example of why Pirate Skeleton is not a problem for us. Because even though we're going to have lesser healing received, look at the amount of healing this is giving us. It's not going to hurt us at all if it's up. And most of the time you don't actually need the heal that comes from it. You just need to be able to sustain a bit more damage when you're low on health, so that you can buff the other shields up. Shields is a really great thing because you can put it up and you can allow yourself to be aggressive at all times. And as I've been over a lot of times in PvP, one of the strongest things you can ever play, one of the strongest ways you can ever play is always be on your enemy, always pressuring them. Don't let them get time to buff, don't let them get time to do burst combos on you. Get them on their back and constantly keep the pressure on them. And shields will allow you to do that. Constantly maintaining pressure while also maintaining a good defense. So really nice to use there. Again, as I said, it's our panic button. The size of the ward increases the lower you get on health. So, and my usual rule for this, my rule of thumb here is that don't use this unless you're below 50% health, because on this heavy armor build, you can just sustain quite a lot of damage. So you don't necessarily need to spam this if you get like 60-70% health. You don't need to spam this. But if you get low enough, this will definitely help you out in most situations. Just be aware, this ward will go to the lowest level, the lowest health ally, if you catch what I mean there. So if someone is lower health than you, it'll go to him. And sometimes it can really screw you over. If you're in a little group, let's say 4 or 5 people, it'll go to someone random, and you'll be he would have stolen your ward, and you'll die maybe. So constantly keep harness up. If this doesn't heal you immediately, if it doesn't hit you, it hits your friend maybe. Use this immediately after. Do it as a follow-up. But remember, you can put multiple healing wards up at once. So don't be afraid to use this when your allies fall low on health. This is a really great help if you're in a little group and you're outnumbered. So real nice. It has an expensive cost as well. Don't use it too much. The same for a next ability, Daedric Minefield, a 5k cost. Don't spam this. This is our flex spot. We can use other abilities here if you want to. You could slot something like Dark Exchange. You could slot, if you need a Lightning Form here. This is if you're in a bigger group, you might want to run Lightning Form instead of running Daedric Minefield. Daedric Minefield is a really stationary ability, but you can use it as an offensive ability as well. Let's say we're getting into a little spot like this here, and I'm having multiple enemies following me, and I'm all alone. There's no one helping me here. I'm going to be able to put this around here, and I'm going to be able to make them run through it. Each of these can seriously damage them. It has a really nice tooltip, and I'm unbuffed right now as well. It's 7.3k. Just see buffed here. It's at 8k there. So 8k tooltip for each of these. And let's say an enemy critical rushes you through one of these here, uses a gap closure. He might be dragging himself through all of them. He'll receiving 7k from each of them. Maybe not 7 because of the tooltip is not the same as the actual damage, but he'll be receiving a lot of damage. And I cannot describe to you how many moments a Stam Sorg, a Stamina Templar, a Stam DK has killed himself on me just by running through these. So it's really great if you want to distribute some pressure like that. And as I said, you can also distribute pressure if there's a lot of enemies around you and they'll be walking into these. They'll be immobilized for 1.8 seconds, which will give you a bit of time to get ahead of them, maybe streak away, or you'll be able to do some damage to them. You're going to be able to see who takes more damage than others, and by that determine who do you want to go on first then. Or if you're trying to get away from people, put this down and you'll slow some of them down. So definitely really useful if you're playing outnumbered, and especially when you're playing solo. You can also use them as I said, use them stationary so that you're dancing a bit around them, if you catch what I mean. They're not as visible right there. Put them there. So you want to keep yourself line of sight of the enemy, so he's on the other side maybe, and use them like that. You can use them when you're fighting Nightblades for cloaking a lot, even though it's a bit bitchy to be honest to just sit in here and stack yourself on your mines here. Is really useful. But I like to use it when I have a lot of people following me and I know that they're going to come straight for me there, and you can land them and they'll receive some of the burst as well. So you can use it offensive and defensive as you want. Again, it's a flex spot, use what you want here. This is just what I prefer to use. So next up here we got the Resto Ultimate. I have not morphed it yet because I only recently started to use it, but it is very nice, has a low cost, gives you an immense amount of healing. I cannot explain to you just how good this can make you. This can make you survive pretty much anything if you really want to. You can get Circ down by a 20-man Circ, but if you manage to put this up before, you're gonna be assured the next 5 seconds that you're not gonna die there. With this build especially, because you're wearing heavy armor and we're having some shields we can use as well. So it's really nice if you get Circ down. It's really nice if you get low on health. Let's say a ganker gets on you or something and you're in panic. You know you have an ability that can help you out there. Don't use it right away, of course. The ultimate cost is cheap, but don't just blow off your ultimate like that. Ultimate should be an ability that you preserve for the right moment. I hate to see people throwing Eye of the Flames or Resto Ults around without really timing it with anything. I feel like ultimate should be an ability that you kind of save up for and you use it in the correct manner to get the most out of the ability. So don't just throw it away. But it's really nice. It's basically one of the strongest heals. Giving you the basic morph here, and this is not morphed, gives you 7k healing per second, almost 8k healing every second for 5 seconds. So really nice, and I think you can animation cancel it as well. You do like that. So 5 seconds of immortality, really nice if you're under an intense amount of pressure. So that was the abilities here. You can use and switch around what you want to. This is just my example and what I wanted to share with you guys here. So next up is our champion points. I just want to go into these quickly because I fear that this video might already be too long. So next up we got, let's just start with our tower here. We got all into Magician, 100 in there. Reduces the cost of your spells. Why do we have that? Well, we're running heavy armor, so we don't have a lot of recovery, which means that there's no reason to stack immense amount of recovery in the champion points tree there. One thing we don't have though is that the light armor skill tree will give us less cost. That's not the case with the heavy armor skill tree. So our abilities are quite expensive compared to if we were running light armor. So that's kind of the thing you're trading away. You're trading your cost and your damage away for some more tankiness. And by doing that, we'll need something else to supply us with some resources. Again, that was why I was talking about 2 sustain sets and why I am running all into a Magician here to reduce the cost of our abilities. Next up here we got 70 into Lover and 70 into Arcanist here. This is our recovery. This is for Lich when it procs, and again, even though we have 70 points into this, it's still 19.5%. That's quite good. It's not too bad. This is going to help us when we proc Lich especially. Lich is going to be so powerful in combination with that and the already existing recovery. So next up here we've got Tumbling. Why do we have that? Tumbling is basically a dodge roll on a break free or CC breaks. You're constantly going to be CC'd. One of the most important things in PvP is to use CCs like snares, stuns, and immobilization. This build uses them. You're going to be using Street to stun people, C-frags to stun people, Mines to immobilize them. So to keep pressure on an enemy effectively, you want to be using the 3 type of CCs that you can find in this game here. And other players are of course always going to be using those towards you as well. That's why I am going 30 points into this, so I can afford to do an additional dodge roll or to block, like to CC break a bit more. Again, we have Constitution passives, which is feeding us. Sorry, I think my max food ran out there. That is feeding us a lot of stamina, so we're going to be able to. We're really going to be able to support dodge rolling, break freeze with this setup here. So 30 points into Tumbling. I really like this. Also because my playstyle is very up in the face of the enemy. I don't give myself a lot of time to avoid CCs. I'm not too good at that, so I'll need something to help me. This is just how I play. If you don't have those problems, you could distribute some more of this from Tumbling into Arcanist or something. But I really like it. Really like how it works. Next up here we got Apprentice here. We got 10 into Blessed. We don't have too many active healing abilities that heals us immediately. We have Healing Ward and we have Power Surge, but it's not really the same. But I put 10 points into this just because of the Resto Ult. So next up here we got Elfborn, increases the the damage and healing from spell criticals. Well, spell criticals not too high, against 20% I think. Was 20% right? Yeah, 24. So we don't have too much of that either. Another reason to only having 10 points into it. So we're not relying too much on criticals. Next up is spell erosion though. 60%, 60 points into this here. Sorry, points, percents, wow. 60 points into this here. Again, we're using sharpening on our front bar. This is going to help us counter that heavy armor meta. That this build is another example of heavy armor play. Why am I standing in a tree there? Of heavy armor. Jesus Christ. Okay, I'm bad at positioning my camera here. But a lot of people running heavy armor. It's basically a heavy armor meta. So you want to have a lot of spell penetration if you can. And we have 100 points into Elemental Expert. This is going to increase the damage of our Frost Shock and magic abilities. And flame abilities as well. Destrolt is going to increase the damage of Sea Frags, Mage's Fury, Curse, name it. All our damage abilities basically rely on this kind of damage. So 100 points into that, 25% more. Another reason that we can pump our damage so high without actually having that good stats. And not having that good stats, as I said, the reason we're not having good stats is because we're having a lot of sustain. So the 2 sustain sets come at a cost of less damage, but we're gonna have more sustain on this character. More tankiness and more sustain. So next up here we got the Staff Expert. We have 10 points into this just to get 5% more damage to our light and heavy attacks. We are going to be light and heavy attack weaving, especially if you want to proc this poison thingy. Yeah, if you want to proc this poison thingy, you want to be doing light and heavy attacks as well. It's going to be dealing a bit more damage. So light and heavy attack weaves going to be dealing a bit more damage with this thing. Definitely put 10 points into that. And also you're going to get this here. So your next light attack is going to be having increased damage after blocking a heavy attack. Don't get it, but whatever. Next up here we got Thaumaturge. I have 10 points into this because of the Destrolt, nothing really else. I could be putting... If you're running a Boundless Storm, you could be using this as well. But I'm really getting it for the Opportunist here, which could help you with Dawnbreaker. That's why I'm using it here. If you run with Dawnbreaker, increases the damage of the next physical attack by 15% after you interrupt the target. Sea Frag, Dawnbreaker. Bam. Next up here we got Resistant, sorry. Increases our spell crit resist, sorry. Critical resistance. This is why it's on 2.2k, which is going to help us once our shields are down and we get stunned or something. Again, one of the reasons we're a bit more tanky on this build here, and we can allow ourselves not to purely focus on shield stacking, but taking a bit of damage as well, just to go that extra mile to get the kill. And we get 30 points into this, so we also get phase here, get some more resistance after dodge rolling. As I said, I'm a very offensive player, so every time I'm up in someone's face and I dodge roll a bit, or I need to get out of a snare or an immobilize, I'll be dodge rolling as well, you know. So it's gonna help us a bit there, and because we have stamina enough to do that. Next up here we have Hardy. These two are only, Elemental Defender and Hardy, are only going to be useful when our shields are down, not when our shields are up. So on Hardy here it's reducing the damage taken from disease, poison and physical damage by 10%, 10.8%. And the same for Elemental Defender, Frost Shock and Magic, Frost Shock, Flame and Magic damage by 10.8%. And we have 10 points into Thick Skinned here to reduce the damage taken from damage over time. A bit of points into this just to reduce damage taken while our shields are not up, because you can't purely rely on shields. Let's say you meet someone using Shield Breaker, that's going to be devastating to you if you can't survive it, especially if you're on a light armor build. So, and then we got 100 points in the Bastion here. It's going to increase the shield size by 25%. Really useful. I like this a lot because it's both. Like, it decreases the size of both our shields here, Harness Magicka and or Harden Ward, plus Healing Ward as well. So, good shields, good healing, and really nice shield stacking we can use to distribute and absorb damage with. Bread and butter for the Magicka Sorcerer. Use this if you use shields on your Sorcerer, which I don't know why you wouldn't do on the Magicka Sorcerer. It's basically one of the Magicka Sorcerer's strongest points. So make use of it while you can. Really nice. So that was it for the build. Please like, comment and sub. I'd like to see if you guys can come up with some constructive criticism on this build here. I always love reading through your comments and help you guys if there's anything I can provide you with. I'm on PCEU, just ask if you need any help or anything. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I've been Game Dog, you've been awesome, and I'll see you guys next time.